Good evening, folks. Welcome to the annual or monthly meeting of the Historical Society. We try to have a program 5 or 6 times a year.
Except for the dead of the winter.
Yeah, and sometimes we have difficulty figuring out what would be interesting to people, but we came across you have a copy of it, most of you, a 1960 article in the Advertiser, written by Carol Obusky.
Yep, Carol Nicholson.
Carol Nicholson.
Obusky was her maiden
She
name.
wrote for the Advertiser.
She wrote for the Courier, but I think at one time she wrote for the Advertiser, and I don't know which. She did write for the Advertiser at one time, I know.
This is an Advertiser article that she did in 1960.
And she was Carol Ann Obusky, so it's before she was married.
Right. In which she described the businesses along Main Street, going up from the bridge on what would be the northern side over there, and western as it turns the corner, and then coming back down the other side of the street. And so we thought it might be interesting to, we have photographs of almost all of these buildings through the ages, and we thought it would be kind of interesting to take a walk along Main Street in the early 60s, because a lot of us were just teenagers and alive at the time. And a lot of the stores didn't change over the decades, although a lot did too.
Yeah. We're really sort of using this article as a guide, but then we have some pictures that go back into the past further to show what that particular part of the Main Street might have looked like previously. And also you notice that a lot of businesses moved, so you may hear the name of the business in one location, and then further down the street at some point it was there as well. So
we're going to start at the bridge, and this, if you came in these cars, I had a terrible time with cars. Most people can identify what year cars are.
I think it's like the early 50s.
These are 50s. What are they? Early 50s? Okay, so
early to mid 50s.
Yeah. A lot of the photographs you're going to see are of this era, because for some reason people took a lot of really nice photographs of Main Street during the early to mid 50s. And we don't have those kind of photographs for 1960 and 65, but we do have, and most of the buildings and the businesses are the same, but the ones that aren't, Jerry will tell you all about that. My memory is not as good. But if you came into Calais in 1960, this is what you'd come to customs, which is really exactly pretty much the same as it was back then. And you really can't see very well. There's a customs guy over here, and a civilian and a police officer.
And there are no booths.
There are no booths there. The police officer, this fellow right here, if you could zoom in, which you really can't because you lose the clarity, is Luther Barnes.
Oh, yeah.
And I think a lot of people will remember Luther. He was the chief of police.
He was, and when I was little, he was the crossing guard in his police uniform. If you had to cross North Street to get between North Street and Academy Street, when we were little, he's the one that took us across the street.
And again, here's another looking up the street, and we have the Gulf Station here, which a lot of you have been there forever. Back in the maybe early 60s, but by the mid 60s, Albert Ayers ran that gas station. I don't know if any of you remember Albert. And he would, I have a short story about Albert. He and his crew would sit over when they didn't have anything to do on chairs outside the station and check things out as people came across the bridge. And Albert and his crew were sometimes a little more lubricated than the cars at the station. And every once in a while, the customs people would ask Albert to break down a tire, because back in the early 60s, the biggest threat to the United States wasn't the communists or Russia or anything else, it was marijuana. And the customs were really cracking down on anybody smuggling marijuana in the United States. And Albert would sit over there with his crew and always yell across to the customs officers, "Hey, it's in the spare tire! It's in the spare tire!" And every once in a while, they'd be suspicious enough that they would take the spare tire out of some guy's long hair's car, take it over to Albert, he'd break it down, there would be nothing in it, obviously, but he'd get paid $1 or $2 for the spare tire. And Albert ran it a long, long time. Go ahead. And there's another shot of it, that's a little earlier, but that's the way, this little building here was a jewelry store. And it's right next to Tommy's store, Tommy Andrews' store. And I don't know when it got torn down, but there's Luther again. Yeah, I didn't. If you look real closely, that's Luther walking up the street.
Does anyone remember that building? Nick, do you remember that building, that little building?
Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I can, I ought to be able to, but
I was there, I recall.
yeah. Oh, I'm sure it was there.
Yeah.
There's a picture.
Yeah.
And you know, this, if you look,
But
when
they-
you
yeah,
look
I
on the
could-
Canadian
yeah.
side, it and that mansard roof house on the top, it looks just the same now.
Yeah.
Of course, we could have used AI to put some, these are all legit, okay. And of course, the next story you come to is Andrew's Tobacco
Andrew's
Store.
Tobacco Stand, yeah.
And that was one of the most popular places in town for a lot of reasons. And I think there were years, many years, in which Andrew's Tobacco Store sold more cigarettes than any store in the state of Maine. For a decade or more. And that was because Canadian traffic come over to buy cigarettes. And they had incredible business. And I'm very familiar with it because when I was small, my grandmother lived, this is Whitney Street over here, because I was a dead end street. My grandmother lived up there, and my mother and father took, they were caretakers. My grandmother was a caretaker for me because they both worked. And I always had, when I came down the street, I always went into Tommy Andrews and was very familiar with it. And so I know a lot about the Andrews Tobacco Store. And as a teenager, when I was in high school, we had to give book reports. I remember book reports. And Tommy sold the classic comic books, all the classics in there. And about 2 days before the book report was due, everyone dashed down to Tommy's to buy the classic comic book, because they didn't read the book.
The gist of the story.
Yeah, you just had to get enough of it in order to see, and you buy the book. And often you would get the book with half the cover torn off,
Yes.
because it was cheaper that way.
Yeah, they were the ones you were supposed to send
They
back.
were supposed to be sent,
Yeah.
well, what they would do is Tommy and Barry Burns,
Burns.
they would tear the cover off, half the cover off, and send it back to the magazine distributor,
Yes.
claiming that it didn't sell.
That's right.
And then get a refund. And then they would sell it to us for like a penny less than what it had. So that's an important thing to.
And we don't have it included, but we do have pictures of the building. When originally it was the Andrews Hotel
Yeah.
with a, actually looking in those old pictures like it was sitting up higher. I don't think it really was. And there was a big veranda on the front.
There was a veranda up
On
above
the front of it. And Dorothy Burns, Tommy Andrews was her father. And the grandfather, I think, who was probably the founder of the family in the area, was Israel Andrews.
Israel,
And the Reddings, like Betty Redding, and they're all related too, because their great-grandmother was Tommy Andrews' sister. So they were cousins to the Burnses. And the house next door, and I think everybody here would remember it looking like that. We do have some old pictures where that's a cape, and the roof is not nearly as steep, And I call them raised dormers, they're called, dustpan, is that right?
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah, I never remember. Those were added. Dorothy Burns lived in that house first, and she had all of this work done. And on the other end of that house was, originally, was a latticed fenced garden. And she even had gardens in, those of you remember the house on Hinkley Hill that had those beautiful gardens. Well, when she moved from this house, she dug up all of that garden, and that was the beginning of the garden on Hinkley Hill. And of course, she expanded it a great deal. And I'm sure there were other people who lived in it, but Sharon Lewis, Sharon Glass, she and Jimmy lived there. When I was teaching here, I taught with Sharon, and they lived in that house then.
Do you have time for a question about Andrews?
Yeah, go
Do you
right
want-
ahead, sure, you can ask all the questions you want.
Yeah, well, we'd love to have anybody comment that has memories of
Sure.
these folks.
I have no memory
yeah.
whatsoever.
Yeah, I remember that.
But
Yeah.
it looked like there was an ice cream store?
Oh, yes,
Oh, yeah.
there was,
that
on the
separate from it
on the
or part
front of it, there was an ice cream stand and hot dogs. And Molly Burns, who was Doug Hoag's, I'm probably gonna mention people that you have no idea who they are, and I'm not gonna try to explain it. If you know who they are, fine, and if you don't, then don't worry. But Molly Burns, worked in that ice cream, stand, and they sold hot dogs. And they fried them in peanut oil, and, they were really popular. And, the story I'll tell it, Doreen Gregory, worked there in the summers quite a lot, and I used to let those dipped, the chocolates, they dipped the cone in. And so I said to Dorothy once, because they were always, Doreen would always dip them in, and she'd say, well, I don't think that's just right. She'd dip them in again, so you loved it if you got Dorothy, because the chocolate on the outside is about an inch thick. And I said to Dorothy once, I said, gee, I used to love to go down there when Doreen was there, because that chocolate was so thick. She said, yes, she said, every time Doreen worked for us, we lost money.
The building itself, that continued to be a boarding house into the sixties and seventies, did it not?
No. The rooms were still there, and there was furniture up in there, but they didn't rent
Mrs.
anymore.
Andrews, Dorothy's mother, Mrs. Andrews lived there, I think, till she died.
Yeah.
And I don't know when, I remember she was alive, so that could have been in the sixties. I really don't remember when she died.
They had the first
But then
radio.
it was empty after that.
They had the first radio in town.
Did it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
when it was a hotel.
And of course, there were a lot of houses up Whitney Street, all of them were gone pretty much. It looks very different now.
Yes, there does.
Yeah.
And there's Tommy. That's not Tommy Andrews.
No, that's Tommy Jennings.
That's
Tommy
Gary Burns.
Jennings was, a half-brother to Dorothy Burns. Mrs. Andrews, Dorothy's mother, was married before and had 2 children, I think, and he was one of them. He lived on North Street.
I'm looking at these pictures now, I can almost smell the place again.
I know,
Oh, yeah.
I know you're right,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, the peanuts and
yeah,
the popcorn and.
yes.
And they made their own soda over
Yeah,
there
their own
too.
soda.
Yeah, they boiled their own soda.
And the pipe tobacco smell.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's just another picture of it a little later, I guess, yeah. And that's looking down the street a little bit, and there's the house that Jerry was
Yeah,
talking
and
about.
then when that was a cape, the one identifying feature is the bay window. Even when it was a much lower cape with no upstairs like that, the bay window was still in the front of it. And this is the part of town that was called Rum Row. And you can see the remnants of where the chimney comes down, which Dorothy had added that fireplace, but you can see the falling down fence where all of that was fenced in and was a fenced in garden. That's before I don't remember that, Dorothy told me that.
Yeah, and although this part of town was notorious for its bars and called Rum Row. We'll see a photograph of that. Andrews, when there was a restaurant in the bottom originally, and the people in the hotel ate at the restaurant. It was the only place in town that didn't sell liquor. Israel Andrews refused to sell liquor throughout the entire history of
And
the
Barry
building.
Burns he didn't sell.
Never, that I know of. Maybe-
Well, I don't know, it's the
maybe
Budweiser, it's the
maybe later
Budweiser.
on they did. After Old Tommy and Israel, I think in the later
Yeah.
generations they
Yeah.
did, but for most of the history of the restaurant and the store, they wouldn't sell alcohol. And then we go up the street a little bit. That's still there.
Yeah, it is,
And
that's
it looks,
heat
the
pump.
same, doesn't it?
Yeah,
That's not much has
Oh,
changed.
yeah,
that's with the heat pump, right, isn't that what they sell there now?
Yeah,
Heat pumps?
yeah.
They ran a bus company had it
Yes,
for a while.
that-
yes, they did, and I
For a
think
long
maybe they
time,
still
yeah.
use it for the school buses, I'm not sure.
I was gonna say that house on the
In,
previous, yeah.
uh,
We tore that down.
Oh.
Ed, and, it was right plugged full of those, you know, those, really, what are they, yeah. And it cost a fortune just to get them out of the building.
what was that in there?
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
they insulated it
was
with comic books?
Oh, my God.
Probably a lot of them worth a lot of money if you could say
They
that.
would today, yes.
Yeah. And you can see in the background, you know, the houses on Whitney
That's
Street.
Whitney Street, yeah.
And there was a house right behind that house you tore down, the one that Dorothy lived in, with the garden.
That was a
And
border
that belonged to them too.
house. They did?
Yes, before, at one time it did, and they rented it.
It was a rooming house, I think.
Well, I remember when it was just a single family lived there.
Oh, yeah, that building right there, that gas station, that's a good poker house.
Yeah,
Upstairs, they had, you know, we had a hard job getting up there,
yeah.
in case somebody come around looking to see what's happening.
Did people recognize this part of town, where this is? No?
That's Andrews right there.
That's Tommy Andrews.
That's Tommy Andrews. This is an early photograph, obviously. It's after 1895, but not much. You can see well, I don't know if
And
those
this
are tracks. No, they aren't.
And this is Union Street.
This is
coming
Union
up,
Street
and
right here.
The two, these two buildings, then there's the trestle. So, but those two buildings were, you know, they were there in our lifetime. And Stanley Knowlton had a shop or something, and Eddie Pisani had a shop in, you know, in one of those buildings once, and then in one of them also, there was evidently a candy store at one time, the Coloresso's, I think. And at the entrance, there were tiles in front of the door, and the Coloresso name was written in the tiles. I can remember that.
Here's a picture of, this is Tommy Andrews again, and this is looking down the road. This is Rum Row. This is after Prohibition was repealed, but even before Prohibition was repealed.
Yeah.
This was Rum Row. And the reason was, of course, if you go up the street a little bit, you head up Union Street.
Yeah.
And that's where all of the rum and the smuggling was being done across the river. And all of the notorious bootleggers were pretty much lived on
Oh,
Union Street.
let me see that thing. Now, you see right there, that's the cape. That roof right there is the cape that was expanded, that Nick was talking about taking down. Now, I'm not sure about this, but I have a feeling
That's the railroad.
that's the railroad
That's the
trestle.
railroad trestle.
So those other buildings what we were talking about a minute ago at the end of Union Street would be right up in here.
Yeah.
And I don't know where it was here, but if people know where I live, the people who lived there before we did were the Dimitris.
Yeah.
And Mr. Dimitri, they lived there for 40 years or more, but they called him Mike, and they had 3 daughters and then 2 sons, and they were all Mike. I mean, one son was Lawrence, but they called him Mike. One son was Howard, but they called him Mike. And the father, I don't know what his name was, but they called him Mike. And 2 summers ago, and I mean, you know, my parents bought the house where I live like over 70 years ago. And 2 summers ago, this old man came up over the steep bank from Martin's, and it was the youngest of the Dimitri boys, and he was 95, and he could remember everything. But he told me that his father had come from Armenia, and that he had walked from Armenia to Belgium to get a boat. He had gone by foot and came to New York and then came here. And he had a fruit stand in this area somewhere for years and years, and he died in the early 50s. Yeah, you can have this back.
That wasn't listed though.
It's not listed, no, I just threw that in.
No, okay,
That's the building on the corner of Union Street.
became Fred Spinney's store, for those of you who remember Fred Spinney.
Is that just a picture when that building was newer, or was that like a higher quality construction than the other ones?
No, that's the same building as the, not the last picture that you just saw, but the one that showed the corner of Union Street.
Okay,
Can we go back a couple?
'cause it looks pretty nice right there.
Yeah, there. You see the building with the shutters? That's the same building. Okay, Herm?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, see, that's the same building. And then there were 3 or 4 houses behind it, and that's the same building.
That's the same building. That's Fred Spinney. You can't, this is a bad resolution on this, but that says that's Spinney's store, Fred Spinney's store right at the corner. And that was there for years. When I was a kid, I lived at my grandmother's on Whitney Street. When I walked up the street, because I always had to walk home to Spring Street, of course I went by Fred's store. And he was a jovial old fellow. He always came out and talked to me.
I can
Nice enough guy.
And we're not doing the other side of the street tonight, but since we've got this picture, we'll just throw in that, you know, this is Pickett's Laundry, this building on the left, where everybody sent, you know, shirts and linens and bedding and everything. It was in the summertime, the doors were open and the heat poured out from those steam things. And the other one
This
is,
one is Alexander's Wallpaper Store, where as a kid, I grew up.
which is Al's great
My
grandfather,
Yeah, no, my grandmother.
right?
at
Isn't that
point-
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alexander's Wallpaper Store.
Just a general observation.
Yeah.
It amazes me too, when I see these pictures, like the one from a couple before showing the long shot down the hill.
Yeah.
That there could have been that many buildings in that space.
Oh,
It just
yeah.
doesn't seem
Yes.
possible.
And
And I'm
actually,
seeing the evidence of it.
we'll get to it in a minute, but actually, there were all these businesses from Union Street down to the bridge.
Almost there now.
But then there was a big section between Union Street and pretty much between, at one point, between Union Street and Monroe Street, that was mostly all residential. And then you started with businesses and things.
And there's Fred's store again, Fred Spinney's store again.
It
A la-
declined
A
over
later
the years.
photograph, and Stanley Knowlton had his antique store there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And that would have been in the 70s.
Yeah.
That would've
Stanley
been-
Knowlton, he would go around, he wore a caftan and had a parrot on his shoulder, and he was bald
Swore
with an
people.
earring, and he swore at people. And he claimed that he had been reincarnated, and that he had the rock in his apartment that he was killed with in a previous
Showed that to me
life,
many
in
times.
like Africa or something.
Um,
He came here to do window dressing for the Nazis.
He was in the Royal Air Force during the war.
Was he?
Yeah, RAF,
The First World War?
Second World War. Well, it could have been.
He could have been, yeah,
the
because-
first, I don't
I
know.
mean, we were young.
He was a strange guy. My wife and I went in, he had an antique store in here, but he had things upstairs too. And I can remember Jane and I went upstairs, he wanted to show us something. And he had Lord Nelson's telescope that Lord Nelson had used at the Battle of Trafalgar. And he only wanted $50 for it. And I thought to myself, well, I'm easily deceived, but.
That doesn't
It
sound
seems to
quite
be
right,
$50,
does
and if he asked for 50,000, I might have given it to
Should be in
him,
the
but 50
50s, yeah.
didn't sound right to me. But Stanley had all sorts of things like that, and we could do a program on Stanley Olson.
Oh, yes,
He
we
was a
could.
character,
Yeah.
some of you remember.
And you see by this picture, that second building is gone.
Yes,
Before
it
the,
is,
before
right,
the,
yeah. That's the
tunnel.
garage there. Yeah.
No.
And as Jerry said, as we now come around the corner, there were residences between the corner of Union Street and.
and there were residences in this
Yeah,
section
it
too.
did.
Right, yeah.
At once.
But this is what you now know as Joe's Pizza,
Same building,
same building.
but it was Ed Williamson's fish market.
When did it
And
become the Angle?
more recently, it was, after that, it was the Angle Home.
In the 70s, or maybe even in the late 60s. Sometime in the, I don't know, it was the late 50s or around 1960, I don't know when it was. Ed Williamson put in a takeout window in the back where you, instead of going into the shop, you could get fish and chips and things from the back window. Do you remember that? Came out onto the A&P parking lot.
That's all the Olsons.
Right.
That's right, and I don't know, do you know when
It was very
he started?
soon, it was very soon after this, because it was in the early by the mid-60s, it was the Angle Home.
Yeah,
Because
Yeah.
I recall it, walking up and down Main Street, and being near the movie theater, it was the Angle Home at that point. So this is, well, as I say, this is earlier than '60, but,
yes, that's in the 50s.
yeah, but it was still there in 1960, according to Carol.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Western Auto, but this is earlier than 1960, and you'll find that, in 1960, it isn't there anymore.
It wasn't there anymore.
It's moved up the road to the other side of what is Yanofsky's store there now.
And then, in the A&P,
It's a 56 Chevy,
yeah,
the one in front of us,
yeah,
57 wagon.
yeah,
Is that what it is?
so it's probably the late 50s, maybe, or after 55. The A&P expanded and took the
They
space
took that building.
and made that, which is
yeah,
really
yeah.
all of what most recently was the label shopper. That would be from where it says supermarket all the way to the seafood. And Western Auto moved up the
On the
street.
other side of that, between the Yanofsky's and the A&P, isn't that where it was?
Where what
Like,
was?
when they moved the
They
Western
moved
Auto,
it,
right in between
up, yeah,
Yanofsky
they
and-
moved it up here, up in there.
We
yeah.
should explain
We've
that
got a picture.
this, Yanofsky's is here, and this is the
See,
movie
State
theater.
Theater.
And the movie theater burned
yeah.
in 1958. So there was a big gap there,
Yeah.
and that's where they moved Western Auto.
And the Yanofsky store had three parts in the old days. There were three sections, and they sold men's clothes, they sold women's clothes, and they sold children's clothes. And I can remember in the lobby of the State Theater, there was I probably wasn't all that big because, we were kids, but you went in the door and you had this what seemed like a big space, and in the middle was the booth where you bought your ticket. There was a door on either side, and then right behind where you bought your ticket was the concession stand. But Yanofsky's had a display window that came into that part of the theater, so they could have closed it. So you went to the theater, it was like looking at one of their downtown windows, because they would dress the window and try to get people to go in.
Okay, and this is Western Auto where it was in 1960. They moved it up to the other side of it.
And got to be after the fire too.
Right.
Yeah, because that's the middle section, that's where the thrift shop is now.
Right, and
Yep, that's Vera Merrill. Yeah.
the store. I don't know who the boy is.
Oh, I
Carl
do,
Smith.
yes, that's Carl Smith, that's
Carl
right.
Smith? Okay, there you go. Get inside the West And this is just a close-up view of the other picture. Shows you more up the street, shows you the State Theater, shows you the Yanofsky store.
Is when the fire, I don't mean to keep interrupting.
That's all right.
When the fire came, this section from where the State Theater sign is, this first section, Yanofsky's had this, the building that still exists in the middle, and then a wing sort of on either side. And that first section burned. And that's when Western Auto became this middle section, and all of Yanofsky's was shrunken to 1/3 of what it had been before the fire.
And Harvey Studio moved across the street.
And then that moved across the street after the fire, and the Seaboard Finance, I think, moved up over Penny's.
Yep. Go ahead. There's the inside of the State Theater.
Yeah.
For those of you who remember the State. There's the balcony, for those of you who remember the balcony.
I do.
And the kids, I wasn't one of them now, the kids would get out there and throw stuff down on the field. And I can't remember the guy who was.
Mr. Bobby Haskins' father,
Yeah, he was.
he had the flashlight.
Right.
And one time we went to the drive-in after it had to be a while after the fire, and somebody said, wouldn't it be something if Mr. Haskins showed up, and by God, didn't he? He was working at the drive-in.
Yeah, he was the enforcer in there, and if you've got a bad reputation, which didn't take much to get one, he kept a very close eye on you, and sometimes he would make you
Put you out.
sit. When you came in, you'd say, you're sitting over there, like up in the back in the corner up here, that's where you got to sit because you had been thrown out.
And your
before.
parents never called and complained and said, my child should not be told.
No,
They said, good, and throw him out if he doesn't behave.
And this is the concession stand you were
And
talking
there's the
about.
window.
Yeah.
I mean, now it's got like pictures in it. It used to have clothes in it.
Window from.
Window from the
Oh,
office.
yeah.
Okay, now we're looking at it, this is an earlier shot, but we're looking at it from the other direction. There's the State Theater, and now we have Sears, and this is Bernardini's store.
And that's the Bernadine block.
Yeah,
And you can
Bernardini
see,
block.
even earlier than this, where the Yanofsky store is and A&P, and all of this except Bernardini's was all residential. But there's a hedge down there near the Western Auto sign, and that was Whit Mason's house, a very, very old cape, as old as the cottage or older. And then, then this other house, there were houses all along that, which anybody as old as I am remembers.
And here's another more close-up of this is Bernardini's store, the Sears store, the Boston Shoe store. and-
Barber shop. Yeah, Jim Casey's barber shop.
Casey's
Yeah, this store, this section right here was two stores, and the doors were on an angle and they faced each other. And on the right-hand side, before Jim Casey, eventually, Jim Casey moved his barber shop where the Sears store is. Things kept changing. This was the Boston Shoe store completely. Then they took over this section, and Jim Casey moved in here to Sears, and Sears went up on North Street. And this other side was Roy Ryan's tobacco store. And then this, of course, was Bernardini's. Now, this picture, I threw this picture in because this is the same scene. This is the same place in Calais. And you see, Bernardini's, excuse me, I'm standing in front of you.
Go
The
ahead.
Boston Shoe Store building has not been built yet, and, oops, did I do that? No.
I did that.
It's my technology. And this house, these houses were taken down, and but now do you see there's a fence right here? And that fence, see, the Yanofsky started buying up all of this land. That fence bordered the front lawn of a large house that was set quite a ways back. And it was there in my lifetime. When I was little, there was no parking lot. And where Martin's is and where the parking lot is, that was all woods. And we would walk down through the woods, and you went through the woods and you came to an old fence that had a hole in it. And we'd go through the fence, and it was attached to a barn, and the big house that went with that fence was still there. The Yanofskys owned it, and they rented it, and the Christakises lived in it, that I can remember. Now, in the other picture, remember there was a house that had a porch on the front of it, and that's this house there. And this does anybody know without me telling you? What's that?
The old Catholic church?
The old Catholic church, that's right. Yeah, that's the old Catholic church, which is where Eva's house is, and it became, well, I remember when it burned. It burned in the 60s. It was a bowlodrome, it was a roller skating rink, it was a storage place, like a warehouse, but of course, in, the tower was gone, it was just the windows were, shaped like a church, but when they built the church on Calais Avenue in like 1890, and the rectory was on High Street.
This is probably one of the oldest photographs we have. This is probably 1865 or something, right after Civil War.
But,
Do you have any pictures of the church like close up or?
Oh, yeah.
yes, we do.
Yeah, lots of them.
Mhm. Once we did a program a long time ago, I think maybe we should do it again, of the churches, all the churches in town, because many churches have had more than one building. Not all of them, but lots of them have.
You have to understand that all the Catholics lived over on
I
Union.
mean, yeah.
Yeah,
And originally in Calais, that's where all of, that's.
that's where the Roadrunners were.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
And the Beckett house would be next, would be like in here, and the Stone house, they would both have been there when this picture was taken.
This is the Bernardini.
Yes.
This is Ryan.
Now, see, that's Ryan Brothers.
Yeah.
Now, at this particular time, I would say Roy Ryan's was where Sears and Roebuck was. I think because I think this is Bernardini's, and this is what was Sears and Roebuck in the other picture, and also it's what later became Jim Casey's barber shop.
The one with the facing doors you talked about?
That would be one store up.
Oh,
This would be the one with the facing doors. This would be Roy Ryan's. And I do remember that.
He sold sheet music and postcards and that kind of stuff. right?
Tobacco.
Tobacco, yeah.
I only remember it lightly. There's a Woodrow Wilson.
That was Louis.
Yeah, this is the grandfather.
95th birthday.
Yeah. He made peanuts in the window. Remember that? Here's that. Now this, you see, this is after the fire. See this? That's all burned. And wasn't the story that Mr. Bernardini was in there making peanuts while the fair was burning?
That's what they had said.
And of course, you went up Monroe Street,
There's
and
the bowling alley.
there's the bowling alley, which
Those
was
Bill's
later
Bowling
Nellie Gibson's antique shop.
I'm surprised there was a traffic light there at Monroe.
Yeah.
I wouldn't think
And,
there was
and,
that
and in
much
some
traffic.
pictures, there's one of those little boxes with the policeman in it, directing traffic in that spot. And this house is where Jim Casey lived, Mary Casey, Francis Casey. And then the next house is still there. That's where Bernadines grew up. You want this back? Now, there's Hills Bolodrome, which people our age would remember. And this was Frisky Osborne's drugstore. And it was a really old-fashioned drugstore with a marble counter and ice cream tables and chairs, and over here a counter, and there was right sort of when you went in the door, there was this really quite elaborate mahogany or walnut wooden structure, and it was freestanding, but it was for filling prescriptions because it was just sort of elaborate on the front, but around the other side were all the drawers and the things for filling the prescription.
Look at the car.
Yep, 1958 or 9, when they started with fins, maybe.
Those are big fins.
Yeah.
Those are bigger than.
They are big
I don't know
fins.
what kind of, I'm not good at cars, but that certainly is an unusual car.
I think it might be a Plymouth.
Yeah.
Was that for Cecil Miller down his?
Yes, he did. After Frisky Osborne. Do you remember Frisky Osborne?
I know, I'm
Frisky.
Do you remember, Nick?
Oh, yeah.
Remember the drugstore?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
we used
was
to.
in there.
Yeah, yep, and he was married to
Well,
Margaret Thomas.
Hit the next picture, you'll see her. Oh, no, I
No,
guess we
that's
took it
not
out.
it.
Yeah,
And that,
right.
now,
Yeah.
the picture, the building we just saw said Murchie's Insurance, which is what was there more recently. This picture, and I don't remember this is somebody's men's wear. And this is earlier than that.
It was-
Where's it say?
It came and went pretty quickly. That's
Yeah.
sort of it.
So this picture's earlier than the one we just saw.
It's Mrs. Osborne.
That's Mrs. Osborne, that's Margaret Thomas. She was Dr. Thomas's sister, isn't that right, Nick?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what you see there, which we won't do now, but this, of course, is what was first it was the Baptist church, and then they moved. This is an Asher Basford building, like the Homestead. It was built by Asher Basford. And then it became the Methodist church. And the Methodists then moved to what had been the Unitarian church at the bottom of Calais Avenue, and this was torn down. I don't really remember it. Do you, Nick?
Not really.
I know it was torn
That's
down
what
in our
where Johnson's
lifetime.
Hardware was, right?
Johnson Hardware is right here.
Next door, that building is.
Yeah, which was pennies in
As
this
you can see, that's
picture.
their.
For Sherwin-Williams. Sherwin-Williams.
Yeah. And, yeah, this is where they built
That's
Sherwin-Williams.
W.T. Grant.
And W.T. Grant before they enlarged. Yep, there was.
Yeah.
Okay,
There
now,
we are with the 3 chain stores.
yeah.
And the liquor commission, right? Wasn't it?
Is
Yeah.
that, I'm not sure what this is at this
I
time.
think that was a liquor store. Is that on the list? I think it is, yeah.
Oh, I don't know what's on the list.
Or maybe, it's no, the liquor commission is in the next block in this list. I'm pretty sure, yeah.
Yeah. The liquor store moved a lot, I mean, for a while. But, so I'm sorry, this is where the jewelry store is now. And it was a jewelry store, it was a bank before that, but in this picture, I'm not sure, but there were the 3 chain stores, Newberry's, Woolworths, and Fishman's. Woolworths was in the middle, and Woolworths at some point, I don't know, the late 50s, the early 60s, left Calais, and Newberry's then took over the whole space. And this now is where that junk shop is, and where this part is empty.
You know, Fishman's to this day,
Yeah,
if you lift up the front mat, because I seen
the tiles are still there.
The tiles,
JJ,
they're yellow and red.
FM Fishman, yep,
They're
you're
still
right.
there.
They are, yep. And then here is Bates Jewelry Store, and that would be,
Yeah.
like, right now, it's empty, but last summer it was like the field station for the construction on the road. And at one time, it was, Janowski's had, because Janowski's built this building. See, they took things down and they built that building, and it says Janowski's up there, I think 1932. And Janowski's used this for a jean shop. That would be like in the 70s or 80s, something like that. And then Carroll Cutright, which is where there's a barber shop now, and it has a little, you go up little stairs, it's got a little balcony up on the top.
Well, Beckett's store would have been there too.
Yeah, Beckett's store would be way down
Yeah,
here
we're-
next to the bank.
We're gonna come to a photograph.
Okay, we're probably going so.
Everyone-
This is Newberry's, this is after Woolworths went out,
Yeah.
and Newberry's took over the lunch counter that Woolworths had.
Well, Woolworths had a lunch counter.
Yeah, they did, but this is it,
Yeah.
really, because this is the part of the store that was Newberry's. I mean, that was Woolworths, and then Newberry's took over the whole thing, and so they had the lunch counter.
We get a
And
whole meal
Fishman's
for
had one
65
too.
cents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, now then, we get into the block where, Bob Truigy had the Rexall drugstore,
Yeah.
which before that was Lord's drugstore, and it was a smaller store.
Go to the next picture, I think there's a little closer out there. It is.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Okay, so this was the drugstore, but you see, right up here, it says this is Lord's, and old Mr. Lord ran that until Bob Truigy bought it in the 50s. And then Beckett's, of course, they made the candy up on the third floor, I think. And old Mr. Beckett, who lived to be almost 100, that was one of his aims, was to be 100. And then this was Rutherford's jewelry store in the bank building. And these were all apartments. And the Merrill Trust Bank. Yeah. Anybody has a question or a comment for him? This is inside Rexall
A
drugstore.
little later.
A little bit later. That's
Yeah.
Marie McGarrigle.
Yeah, you see.
I think, is that Mrs. Mitchell? Billy Mitchell's mother.
That was Sharon Stevens.
Not
Grant.
Sharon Stevens, Sharon Grant. This
And,
woman I know, but who is she?
McGarrigle.
I know, and that's,
McGarrigle.
yeah, Jack McGarrigle
Yeah.
and Bob Truigy. And that right there is Mrs. Stevens, is Sharon's mother.
Right.
Okay.
Oh,
She's still alive.
yeah.
Fran Stevens,
Yeah.
that's right.
That's Tom James in the back between Bob.
Oh, is that who it is? Yep,
Yeah.
yep, right here.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Now, so then you see how things change. See, this is the St. Croix Music Shop. You see? That's before they moved up to Frisky Osborne.
The corner.
On the corner. And this is the Beckett store.
I think Cecil Miller bought it and moved it out to the corner.
Yeah, yeah. And, yeah, and the bank. Yeah, okay.
That's where Nick bought my diamond at.
At Rutherford's?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
I bought it.
Well, yeah. I didn't buy it.
And all of this is gone. And remember we used to pay the cable bill in one of
Oh,
these
yeah,
buildings?
yeah, yeah.
And originally, this section was Woods, I can't think of the man's name.
William
This-
Woods.
William Woods
Woods
in
store,
the 1800s.
He had a store.
He had a
here.
store here, but this store originally,
Went right
this
through.
door went through and came out. It was like L-shaped.
Well,
And
when
then,
Gordon Lord had it,
Yep.
he had residences on both streets.
Yep. And then, of course, it had a fire and all this burned, so that this is all that's left. And look at the shape of this poor building, now it's all boarded up.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's sad when you think about how vibrant things were downtown and how abandoned it is now.
And originally, the entrance to this building
Yes,
faced the corner.
was where
And
this
the
door
building
is.
was just beautiful, when they originally built it in the 1890s. And that, why they moved that over there, I have no
But
idea,
you know
but
what-
it,
Nice place. Really.
yeah.
And it's amazing, though, you know, that they moved this
They did.
intact.
Yeah.
You know, they didn't take it out. It looked exactly like that, but it was here. And they took it apart and moved it over there. What were you gonna say, Pam?
Well, when the mills were booming, that's when we had all of this
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
We had the people and
Yeah,
jobs.
yeah, we've got a lot less people than that when we were young.
Yeah,
And this is inside the Merrill Trust.
Those of you who did business there, you remember the
oh, yeah.
inside of it
For
probably.
sure.
Here's the entrance on, over there.
You know, I don't mean to talk so much.
No, no, go ahead, you're doing great.
Now this, of course, is looking up North Street. And
There's a
one of
Texaco
the-
station up there.
There's a Texaco
Oh, yeah.
station, yeah. There was a Texaco station, like, behind St. Anne's Church, like,
Yeah.
where the post office parking lot is on the side. And there were houses across here, but notice, this is before they widened the road, and North Street was all elm trees. You see, they were all there. This building was Dr. Mundy's eye office, but, it's been torn down. Later, it was an upholstery shop at the end,
Oh, yeah.
maybe.
Calais
And
Advertiser was there.
then this is the Calais Advertiser. Then there's a Singer sewing machine store. And this was a market,
Checker Market it was called.
Checker Market, yeah, we've got a picture of that too. And this is Levy's, A Levy. And this is the North Street, well, that's still there, you know, this is the building, this is the sarsaparilla building.
Right.
And this is the other side of it. And on the window of Levy's, it always said, "Ladies ready to wear."
Oh,
And you
yeah.
know, when we were kids, boys going, we thought, you know, like a lady ready to wear, like you go in and get a lady.
So that was Bunny Levy's place,
Yeah,
yeah?
yeah,
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
You roamed all through those buildings when you
Oh,
were
yeah,
kids.
yeah.
What is that thing sticking out from it?
This,
Yeah,
that's a sign advertising something, but I don't know what.
looks like a house.
Yes.
Okay, now, this is a little close-up of that same area. Now, here,
Now
at
you
this
see
point, this is the market,
Yes, Checker Market.
and this is New Way Cleaners.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot to mention Elger's on North Street, because, Elger's Cleaners was on North Street. Billy Algar, and, he was Helen Smythe's
I'm
mother.
curious, if Down East TV, that must have been Gordon Lord's
Yes, it
first,
was.
must have been his first TV.
Yep, and he also had, at one point, and I can't keep all the years straight, at one point, he was down further on Main Street.
Near Beckett's. Right?
Yes, but he was in where Beckett's
Oh, he
was.
was.
But
okay,
he
right.
also was way down in that block where the St. Croix Tap and whatever restaurant is.
Yeah.
He was in that one.
Okay.
That's in one of the pictures too. And that's the Checker Market. Yeah, that was that was one of those sections of
Yeah, that wasn't around very long. Checker Market was.
Okay, now,
Now we're around the corner.
we come around the corner, and this is A Levy. So I didn't remember that they sold paint.
I didn't either, no.
No, but, and then Trimble Brothers, shoe store. Later, later it became Cassidy's shoe store, but they also had been down here. And then after that, it became Mainline Studios. So, and that's empty now. Now, this is the McAllister building, and McAllister's gift shop was down here on the ground floor. Mr. Day, Elmer Day, had a law office here. He was, the McAllisters, they were related. And at one point, they lived in one of these apartments upstairs.
Francis Dave.
Francis Day. But there was, Elmer Day, wasn't, yeah.
It was a Francis
Mary
Dave
Days,
over
Mary Days, father.
Okay, maybe it was.
Yeah, this is, you gotta go back quite a long way though, to it. Now, and here is Crumbs. This is Crumbs. It was Silverman's. And before, because it was built in 1886, and I don't know what it was then, but before Silverman's, this was W.T. Grant's, before they moved uptown further. And actually, in the old days, this was really the vibrant business section. This is where all the businesses were, down here.
Yeah, the bottom of Church Street, that, where it was down to Hog Alley and that area, that was the center of town for most of the history of Calais.
And, now, here, this is Jim Kelly's clothing. And in an earlier picture, which you'll see, it was Grierson's clothing. And Jim Kelly's father took over Grierson's. Now, there's really three sections. We didn't include the picture that shows this, when these three things were separate little wooden
I
stores.
don't know whether the next one does or not.
No, we didn't do it. I'm
Okay.
pretty sure we didn't. This middle section was Jane Todd's ice cream parlor and chocolate shop and lunchroom. And she made chocolates upstairs. And she lived in the house that is gone, and it is where Kenny Thomas's new house is, on Lafayette Street. Okay, now, you see, this is what happened. And in this picture, this is Silverman's. And this is Murray Tingley's IGA, before he ever went up to Washington Street. And also, I missed in these three buildings, this first one is what was Grierson's, and in this picture, I'm pretty sure it says Grierson's, if it were closer. And the middle one is Jane Todd's ice cream parlor, and this one is Ross Jewelry Store, Ross Brothers.
I'm gonna be able to see the next picture. It gives us a little bit,
Yeah, see,
there's Ross Brothers.
yep, and now here, where after Jane Todd was gone, this became John Cassidy's shoe store. Before, he went up to Trimble's after Trimble's went. So I don't mean to confuse you, but, I mean, the businesses moved around. And see John Cassidy's, Jim Kelly's, Silverman's. This is still McAllister's gift shop. Trimble Brothers is still here. This building, of course, later, it became Taylor's Furniture Store, before they ever went down river. And after that, it was the Kinder Shop, where Hilda Dodge had children's clothing. Now, this is the corner of Sawyer Avenue, and this is that same block where we just saw Silverman's, and I said the IGA was in it, and now it's the restaurant, and the restaurant has three sections. This is the third section, which they've recently made into a sub shop, I think. But it was a different Casey, but it was Casey's Barbershop for years and years. And they sold cigars.
It was Casey's Barber Shop for probably 60 or 70 years.
Oh, yeah.
For a
I
long
remember
time.
going there when I was little.
I think the next picture shows the barber shop.
Yeah.
It was the first barber shop that had a separate section for women. So they had their hair done. They had a little room in the back where if you wanted to have your hair done, you could go to Casey's and have it done in privacy. They had a door on it. If you were a little girl, I guess you got your hair cut.
Yeah. It's like they put a bowl on it and.
But there were at least four of them in there. They were all Casey's, and they all, and there were generations too, because this Casey's Barbershop was there. I got my hair cut there.
I did too, and what I remember is, it seemed like I always had the same little old guy, seemed like a real old man when I was little, and it always, when he was getting done, he always sort of wrapped on your head and put rabbit ears up on you. Now, this is the Palladian block, which is, Sawyer Avenue is here where we just ended, and this building's still standing. This was Todd's hardware store, now it's Karen's Now it's Karen's Diner. Now, there are a number of things here. You can see right here, that sign. That's
McFall.
John McFall's Antique Shop.
Oh, yeah.
It was called the Red Cradle. And it had, I can't see it here, but it had, well, you sort of can. This was a wooden, old-fashioned looking cradle that hung as a sign over the, and here, in this section, this was George Irving's florist shop and funeral parlor.
Really?
And up here on this floor, Betty Barnes lived across the street from me. And her father was old Mr. Rideout. And I remember when he died, and he was laid out at George Irving's funeral. And in the back, this is also the same place where Sally Smith had the appliance store. And there were old stairs in the back. And the upstairs was not finished. It was like a barn. And so when someone died, if they weren't laid out in their house, which often happened, then, and if they were at George Irving's,
Right.
they were up at the top of those wooden stairs on the landing, like a hallway upstairs. The casket was just up there. You went up these old wooden stairs like a barn, and there was nothing fancy. It wasn't fixed up. It wasn't anything. And there would be the casket, and then that's
The third floor, I believe, was a ballroom.
it was the third floor.
And there was a basketball court up.
Yeah,
There
it
was
was,
on the
yeah,
top
right.
floor there, you know.
To begin
And
with,
running track.
Right, yeah. No, it's much bigger than it looks here. This
it is.
angle
No,
is not
yes,
good. You
yeah.
don't see how.
And this
how
middle
vast
section
that big building
started
is.
out as the Ancient Order of Hibernians Hall, and it was a ballroom with a stage and everything. That's what became the basketball court. Yeah.
Many years ago, someone took me up to the top of it. That's where
Yeah.
I saw the ballroom. But on the second floor, where Irving had someone had the funeral parlor,
George Irving.
there was a table there with a drain on the bottom of it, and it was still sitting there. And I looked at it for a while before I finally figured out what it was.
That is where they embalmed it.
Where they embalmed it.
And
And it may still be there,
Well, of course, they've made apartments out of these now.
Oh, maybe it's in an
Might,
apartment.
who knows, it might be somebody's couches up there. Then George Irving's florist shop, when he closed, he lived on Washington Street, on the corner of Barker Street and Washington. That used to always be gray, kind of a long house on the left, almost to South Street, right on the corner of Barker Street. And then when he left, Scholl's had their florist shop there for a while. And this corner store, now, I am sure, and Wayne Sammer asked me this, and he remembers the same thing I do. But this picture doesn't show it, and this is earlier than, I think it's earlier than I would remember. But I seem to remember that this was a door. There was a door here, where this window is. And this was another little narrow tobacco store.
There was a pool hall there at one
One
point.
time, yeah.
There was a pool hall in there.
Okay,
This
this
is
is
a
this.
little bit better shot of that.
Yeah.
Sure, so
Yeah,
Shoal.
now see, now it shows in
And
this
Falls
picture.
is still there.
Yeah, yeah.
And Todd's Hardware is there. At one point, Todd's Hardware and Taylor's Hardware
They
were side by side.
Right, yeah.
Obviously Todd eventually bought out Taylor's, but we have a number of pictures with both the hardware stores being on that corner Sawyer Avenue.
And do you anybody remember when Todd, even as long as Todd's was there, they stored things on the upper floors, and they had an old-fashioned, the wooden floor with ropes would come down. Anybody remember that? And this section would go down. They could put stock on it and pulley it back up, and that worked as long as that they were in business. Now we get down. Yep. Yeah. See, then it was the Royal Lunch.
Yeah, that's been
Yeah.
any number of things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this, I think that it says hardware, I think
Yeah.
that's Taylor's.
I think you're right too.
Yeah,
I think you're
that's when
right.
it was Taylor's.
Yeah,
Um,
and this, I don't know what this building was, but I remember.
That was a, horseshoe. Beef,
Oh.
beef,
Yeah.
horseshoeing
Yeah.
and,
And this is the
metal
old
work.
fire station,
Yeah.
and this is the city hall, and this is the old hospital.
That was the hospital up there, right?
Yep, that's it, that house was the
Where the-
hospital next.
Where the parking lot for the, city building is, that was.
So
a
that's
big
why we all had to
building
go
in the hospital.
to St. Stephen, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, or the annex.
Well, we didn't go, but our mothers did.
Yeah, that's right. You went, but.
You came back.
And this, we put this in because when you look at the building that's there now, it's hard to imagine that it looked like this. This is the old Opera House. And you can see here, this is before they built the big post office on Main Street that was torn down. This was the post office, right here. This is the entrance to the Opera House, which was all up here. Over in the cottage, we have the piano from the Opera House, from, when they had plays and musicals, and we have it there. And there was a fire, I think, in the 30s.
1936, I think.
And this is the old Congregational Church, which stood right in the middle of Calais Avenue, where you walk up the sidewalk between the two sections of Calais Avenue. It stood right in the middle, and it had what they called a vestry under it. It would be like a hall, and that burned.
No,
The church, or
church didn't burn.
no, but didn't they have a fire in the vestry?
Oh, maybe.
And that's why they built that big church. And they took this, they took this top of it off and brought it over here
Right.
to Church Street. And this is what we would know as the Board of View,
Kenny Collins.
but it was the McLeod House. And this is what that building looks like now,
Yeah, wow.
which is sad.
Yeah.
Now, and this building wasn't in that other picture. This is what was, well, it was Steve's Plumbing, but then it was Mr. Whitener. And now it's a pot shop.
Yeah.
And there's
You can see
Whitener.
heating right here. And the St. Croix Hotel.
So the Opera House changed because of the fire mostly?
Mhm.
Is that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
The shell was left, and if you look at the front of it, you'll see the Gothic shaped windows are bricked up. They're still there. I mean, the shape of them is still
We
there.
have pictures of the fire, and all that's left are the outer walls.
Is this
They're
the,
completely gutted
just the
inside.
wall?
It's surprising that they kept the outer walls, what they did.
but of course, it got greatly altered.
That building's well preserved right there.
Yeah.
Further one down.
Oh, this one right here?
Yeah.
The Syndicate building?
Oh, well, that was a great
Oh,
place there.
or do you mean this one?
Yeah,
No.
that one,
Yeah, that one's still, that's pot shop.
right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's well preserved, all right.
The Barlow House, is that what that is?
No, that's not the Barlow House.
That's Kenny. Kenny
This was
Collins.
called Board of View Rooms.
Oh.
The Barlow House was on the corner of Main Street and Barker Street, next to the radio station. And there were livery stables and things up in the back of these places. Now in this picture, this would have been a single-family home, the McLeod House. And this is the Syndicate block, which stood at the bottom of
Which no longer
Calais
exists.
Avenue. It's gone.
Completely.
All this is gone. It's all
Was
gone.
that Pisani's in?
Yep.
at that point?
Right here. This was Pisani's.
Okay.
And then right here, you can kind of hard to see, but that was what became Lois Campbell's lunch.
We got a picture of it, that's coming right up.
Yeah,
There it is.
see.
There's Lois.
Campbell's lunch. John Crowley had a appliance store.
Yeah. I think he was Ann Caswell's father, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. Yeah, and
did that go from fire too?
So,
They tore it down,
Disappeared.
did that burn, Nick?
Wow.
Did the syndicate block burn or would just tear it down?
There was a fire in it, but it didn't burn completely.
The syndicate block.
I can't remember.
Yeah.
That was a,
I
was that
thought you-
Tori place?
Yep,
Yeah,
Yeah,
at the corner.
then there was the, Pisani's.
Pisani's, Torres and, no,
Tori's and,
Checkeye and Pisani's are the same place.
Simon's spot.
Right.
Yeah.
But Torai, who also had a fruit stand, he was in this block very briefly.
Yeah,
Although we had another store up in further up by the bank.
I might add,
There's
the
Lowe's
best,
again.
best hamburgers in town were right there.
Lowe's Campbell's.
Yeah,
Lowe's.
yeah.
Best entertainment.
I didn't see it.
She was a character, wasn't she? This is right on the corner, and this is Pisani's, Tony Pisani.
Oh, boy, I'll tell you something.
Yeah. I used to play poker with my father
Yeah.
on Thursday nights.
Yeah.
And this is Checkeye,
This is.
which is the same store, the
Same
same
store.
place.
This was a beautiful store. It had
Yeah.
a lunch, well, you're gonna see the pictures of the lunch counter, very elegant.
And here's Gauss Avenue,
Yeah,
here.
and this gal's avenue there, yeah. And this is a very poor picture of the interior of that store, but it was really an elegant place. And, very, very classy.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I think we're done.
As far as we're going tonight.
We reached the end of what would be the western side of Maine.